University of Pennsylvania has nominated Lia Thomas, a transgender swimmer, for the NCAA Woman of the Year award. Thomas, a biological male who identifies as a woman, came under fire in recent months after winning the women's Division I national championship in the 500-yard freestyle. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Grazie Christie, Senior Policy Advisor for the Catholic Association. Dr. Christie, great to have you on as always. A lot to talk about, but first, I want to get your thoughts on Penn nominating Lia Thomas for this award and what you think it says to biological females.
Well, it's a piece with what's been going on at Penn and other places like that. My son just graduated from Penn, actually, and that was very annoying to me. But what they're trying to do is pretend that biological males and biological females can compete physically on the same level playing field, and that's absolutely untrue. You don't have to have an MD like I do or be a biologist to understand that. All you have to see is the differences in male and female physique and understand that men perform at higher levels than women when it comes to physical contests. And this is totally normal, and these are sex-related changes related to our DNA and to our development during puberty and to our hormones. So what Penn is trying to do is pull the wool over our eyes and tell us that this man who identifies as a woman is the woman competitor of the year. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, switching gears, I want to talk about something else. A study published in medical journal Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience. Well, it found that it's kind of unclear if gender-affirming hormones can have long-term effects on cognition. Can you speak a little bit more about the dangers associated with giving children these hormones when we're not even sure of the long-term effects?
Well, this was a really interesting study. There's a huge study that examined a lot of different smaller studies about what is the effect of estrogen and other gender hormones or sex hormones on cognition and Alzheimer's disease, on the development of Alzheimer's disease. And it found that estrogen tends to be protecting women from developing Alzheimer's disease at the same rate that they would if they had less estrogen on board. In the study, they acknowledged that transgender people who are given anti-estrogen hormones, they run the same risks, but no studies have been done. So what we're finding out, even from this study that doesn't speak against transgender therapies, is that what's being done to children who are put on girls who are put on puberty blockers is really an experiment, because there are no studies to tell us if these girls are going to grow up to have Alzheimer's early. And so this is just one more layer of unethical treatment of girls and boys with gender dysphoria.
And what about the impact on fertility, especially as doctors begin, treating teenagers and even children?
Well, what's really sad is that many young people, especially those who present before puberty, are losing their fertility. Sometimes it's because they have hysterectomies and oophorectomies if they're girls. If they're boys or men, they might have orchiectomies, which is a castration. Otherwise, they also receive hormones which take away their ability to ovulate if they're women and to produce sperm if they're men. So what happens is they end up infertile. And this is a terrible thing. If anybody who's watching has had infertility or someone in their family with infertility, this is a very big burden to carry around. And the medical profession is just going around and granting people infertility. This is a very bad thing.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting because over in Europe, Sweden actually stopped giving cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers to those under the age of 16. They did that last year because of their studies and the dangers that they pose. Do you think other countries will follow suit? And why do you think we're not following their lead?
Well, it's very important to note that children cannot consent to these treatments because they are simply unable to consent cognitively. They can't understand these future consequences. They're not able to consent to these. So this is really unethical. Parents are consenting for them, or the state is consenting for them. So later on, they're growing up and turning around and saying, how could you do this to me? I am now sexually dysfunctional. I'm incontinent. I'm infertile. These are all things that I couldn't have said yes to. So Sweden is doing the right thing. Other European countries are doing the right thing. The United States ought to, but we're very much in the grip of this sexual liberation ideology that has completely embraced transgender ideology, even to the extent of making our children infertile and dysfunctional.
Yeah, I want to switch gears. I'd love to talk more about that, but we're running out of time. Something else I do want to touch on with you, though. The Biden administration is instructing healthcare providers to perform abortions in case of emergencies, regardless of state laws. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
I read that directive very carefully. It's actually a solution in search of a problem, because what it's directing doctors to do is directing them to do what they're already doing. So even a very pro-life physician operating in a very pro-life state would always save the life of a mother in the case of miscarriage, for instance, a inevitable miscarriage. If she needed a DNC, the patient gets a DNC. The mother's life is not in danger. This is how responsible physicians have always acted. So I would say there's nothing wrong with the directive. It's asking doctors to do what they would normally do.
Okay, and before I let you go, any final thoughts?
On the transgender issue, I hope that things are turning around. I like that people are concentrating on how damaging it is to children, because it does highlight that transgender ideology is really, unscientific and experimental, and we need to start as a society pushing back.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're talking about it. Thank you so much, Dr. Christie. Always appreciate it.
Thanks.